The clerk will read the bill.
SB 8 by Schwartner, relating to the agreements between sheriffs and the United States Immigration and Customs Enforcement to enforce federal immigration law.
Chair recognizes Mr. Spiller to explain the bill.
Mr. Speaker,
Mr. Martinez Fisher, for what purpose?
parliamentary inquiry.
Please state your inquiry.
Did I hear the chair correctly that the announcement on strict enforcement was just for the two previous SJRs?
There were 3 and 2 of those were postponed, Mr. Martinez
Okay,
Fisher.
thank you.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Mr. Spiller to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this is the bill relating to agreements between sheriffs and the United States Immigration and Customs Enforcement to enforce federal immigration law. I have filed a floor amendment, and at this time I'd like to lay out that floor amendment.
The following amendment, the clerk will read the amendment.
Amendment by Spiller.
The chair recognizes Mr. Spiller to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I lay out this floor amendment to Senate Bill 8, which addresses immigration enforcement cooperation between Texas sheriffs and federal authorities. This substitute builds on the committee's work but improves clarity, consistency, and enforceability. Instead of just piecemeal changes through a series of amendments, we thought it best to present a clean and comprehensive framework that reflects feedback from local law enforcement, legal counsel, other stakeholders, and state budget officers. Let me explain what this floor substitute does. First of all, it applies statewide. Under the committee version, only sheriffs in counties with 100,000 or more population would have been required to pursue federal immigration enforcement agreements. This substitute extends that requirement to all counties in the state of Texas who operate or contract for the operation of a jail. So, and the reason for that is because immigration concerns don't just stop at county lines, and neither should our enforcement efforts. Secondly, standardization of the type of agreement. The substitute directs sheriffs to pursue a warrant service model agreement with ICE. Now, let me back up and explain. Under the Section 287G program under the Immigration and Nationality Act, there are 3 different models within which counties and sheriffs can contract with ICE. One of those is the task force model. That's the most comprehensive. The next one is the jail enforcement model. And lastly is the warrant service model. What we've decided to focus on here is that counties and currently can contract with ICE on any one or more of those 3. But what we've tried to focus on here is saying, look, let's just at least require them, counties, to participate under the warrant service model form. And so that's what this bill does. There were some concerns about the way it was drafted, and so those are done just at the jail level, and specifically what that does, and that's where those risks are most severe. But it provides for warrants of arrest for immigration violations and warrants of removal. So unlike the other task force model where people go out and they're detaining
Mr.
people.
Romero, for what purpose?
Does the gentleman yield for questions?
Mr. Spiller, would you yield for questions? He
Let
will.
me
Okay,
finish my
not
layout
at
here,
this
and I'll try
time,
to be
please.
quick about it. I apologize. But instead of doing that, this is just done in the jail for people that are arrested or that are already there on other charges. And so if a sheriff enters into a broader or more comprehensive agreement, they get credit for that. That satisfies the requirement. Number 3, this provides meaningful state support. So it provides a tiered grant program based on population. So the rural counties, smaller rural counties aren't excluded. There's funding there for them. And under the other bill or the other version, counties over 1 million people did not receive any compensation. This provides for compensation to all participating counties. And the funding ranges are from $5,000 to $40,000. It also, and probably very importantly, provides for an annual reimbursement program. So in the event there are any costs associated with holding ICE detainees, local taxpayers don't get stuck with footing the bill for that. And so there's a reimbursement program built into this. It improves oversight and enforcement. The comptroller has biannual reports to state leadership so we have transparency on who's cooperating and how state funds are being used. And also the Attorney General's office is authorized to enforce compliance and recover legal costs if a sheriff refuses to follow the law. Why is this good policy? Members, this isn't about politics. This is about public safety concerns and law enforcement consistency across Texas. Every sheriff should be equipped and supported to cooperate with federal immigration authorities. What we're saying by this legislation is that if you operate a jail in Texas, you should have a standing agreement in place to work with our federal partners and to serve and execute these warrants if they in fact exist. This policy protects our communities, ensures that dangerous individuals aren't prematurely released, and supports the rule of law.
Mr. Speaker.
Let me also say that I appreciate, we've worked very hard to bring this version to you, and I appreciate, we've had some very, and Representative Romero is waiting patiently for me to finish, so I'm going to say this while I can. I appreciate working with him, Representative Canales, and others. We've had some very frank discussions. We could say that he's beat me up a little bit on this. That's a fair statement, but he's been very persistent, and we've tried to incorporate his concerns, Representative Canales' concerns, into this draft. And I've worked also, I'd be remiss if I also didn't point out Representative Louderback, a former sheriff who has executed and operated under these existing agreements and knows them like the back of his hand. I've worked very closely with him. I appreciate his efforts. I don't know where I'd be on this bill without his work. And I think also he will speak to this and answer any questions as well. But I do want to say thank you to those folks for us to have the best bill that we can for you and what I think is the best bill and the best policy for the state of Texas. And with that, I would yield to questions.
Here yield, Mr. Romero.
Mr. Speaker, parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Did the 10 minutes include the entire layout for Mr. Spiller, or do we start again with my questions?
His 10 minutes started about 5.5 minutes ago.
Mr. Spiller, speak faster next time, please, sir.
All right.
Mr. Spiller, while I do appreciate all the time that we've had in working and trying to negotiate something that was not as egregious as we've seen in other parts of the country. We've all heard about 287G in its initial start and what happened in Arizona with roadblocks on the streets and enforcing. That is not your intention with 287G to create that kind of terror in our communities, is it, sir?
Well, I don't know if it's the intention of 287G. I don't believe it is, but it's certainly not the intention of this bill. This bill in this fourth substitute is focused only on in-jail detainees, people that are already have been arrested on another state charge.
So you're describing the warrant service model.
Yes, exactly.
But initially, if we want to start with its inception in 287G, when it was approved by Congress, it was always a voluntary program, and it was never a requirement that the taxpayers of Texas have to pay for that cost. Is that correct?
I would agree with that. There's a lot of things the taxpayers of Texas have paid for that we shouldn't have had to, but hopefully some of those issues are being addressed. But yes, I would agree with that.
You wouldn't call this circumvention of the original intent of Congress that this be paid for on a local level by taking it over and making it mandatory by the state of Texas to mandate and make it compulsory to all counties throughout the state of Texas?
I don't believe so. And in fact, we have been, Representative Louderback and myself have been in touch, both have been in touch with federal partners in the executive branch to address these concerns. And I would represent to you that I think this is what they, not only are we not circumventing that, I think this is what they want and desire.
But we've never had to use state taxpayer dollars. Up until this point, this would be the first time where we've used taxpayer dollars from the state of Texas to pay for any sort of voluntary 287G participation. Is that correct?
I can't say whether that's correct or not. I don't dispute it. It sounds correct.
Well, I do thank you that in your bill you allow for some return of dollars to those counties. I spoke with a sheriff today that told me he has 532 people with ICE holds. He's on the border, and he's got nowhere to send them. Are you not concerned that we also have a problem at TDCJ, that they're not picking these folks up? and that this cost to the local taxpayers currently may not be fully funded by the legislature?
Well, I am concerned about the cost to taxpayers throughout the entire incarceration and delay process. But when you mention TDCJ, and this bill is primarily focused on not so much TDCJ as it is ICE. And under this deal, once they're notified and these people are identified, ICE has 48 hours to come pick them up. Now,
Well, what I would state to you, Representative Spiller, and I'll move on. I just think that was shocking when I spoke to one of the sheriffs today that said he's got 532 people in his county jail, and ICE isn't picking them up. So while I'm thankful that you're supporting the local taxing entities, and I think of some of the counties around our state, they don't have resources. At $80 a person, that's $40,000 a day that those local taxpayers are paying. So I hope that the intent is with this bill that you actually are going to reimburse. But I want to move on to a couple of other questions.
Let me briefly say also that this bill is intended to help defray actually some of that cost, because under the 48 hours that you mentioned, if they don't pick them up, under existing law, they're authorized to be, if they're otherwise eligible for bond, they're authorized to be released for bond. But the idea is, if we actually identify these people that are in the jail that need to
The
be...
gentleman's time has expired. The following amendment, the clerk will read the amendment, the following amendment to the amendment, the clerk will read the amendment to the amendment.
Amendment by Romero.
Chair recognizes Mr. Romero to explain the amendment to the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this amendment, while I had many other questions that I would have liked to have asked, I'm going to stay on the amendment. This amendment simply asks the comptroller to make publicly available on the comptroller's website any source of gifts or grants or donations that were given to the comptroller specifically for implementation of this grant program, and it is acceptable to the author.
The Romero amendment to the amendment is acceptable to the author. But this is a record vote that Mr. Lowe has requested on all amendments, so this is a vote on the amendment to the amendment. The clerk will ring the bell. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? Being 131 ayes, 1 nay, the amendment to the amendment is adopted. The following amendment to the amendment, the clerk will read the amendment.
Amendment by Romero.
Chair recognizes Mr. Romero to explain the amendment to the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This simply requires a posting of a copy of the agreement entered into either the sheriff or county commissioner's website. We just want to make sure that the public has access to the actual agreements entered into between the sheriffs and the federal immigration authorities by requiring that a copy be posted online. It's a matter of transparency. I expect the public to have confidence in how immigration laws are being enforced at a local level, and posting these agreements is essential. I move adoption. It is acceptable to the author.
The amendment to the amendment is acceptable to the author. However, a record vote has been requested. This is a record vote. The clerk will ring the bell. Mr. Lauterbach voting aye. Mr. Spiller voting aye. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? Being 116 ayes, 20 nays, the amendment to the amendment is adopted. Following amendment to the amendment. The clerk will read the amendment to the amendment.
Amendment by Moody.
Chair recognizes Mr. Moody to explain the amendment to the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. And I just want to kind of lay out what's happening on the ground. I would say probably in all border communities, but specifically the experience that we've had in El Paso. Right now, our county has agreements with the feds to do this work. So this is being done in a collaborative fashion right now through agreement. And so what this amendment would do is say that those counties that have that agreement, and if they're on the international boundary, if they have those agreements in place, then they would be deemed to be in satisfaction of the requirements of the bill as a whole. And that's simply what it does. It says if we're already doing this and those agreements are in place, then that is one other way to check the box to say that you're in compliance with the requirements of the bill. And I move adoption.
Mr. Spiller to speak against the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I respect and appreciate Speaker Moody and what he's trying to do here for his counties, but to me this undermines what we're attempting to do with this bill as far as uniformity and cooperation among all counties, and so I would respectfully move to table this amendment.
Mr. Merrill, for what purpose?
Does the gentleman yield for questions?
Mr. Spiller, would you yield?
Let me withdraw my motion table so that I can answer his questions.
The motion to table is withdrawn.
Go ahead.
Mr. Spiller, you mentioned that you talked to sheriffs around the state, and in this process, and you have a great one standing next to you, there are many sheriffs that we've all spoken to, some of which would even say, you know, I've got multiple ICE officers in my jail. Not only do I have ICE, but I've got CBP, I've got Homeland Security, and I think that that's what Chairman Moody, Speaker Moody is saying, that look, you're asking me to do a warrant service model. I'm kind of doing that and more. Is there a reason why you wouldn't accept this amendment where you have an officer that, because he's on the border, and we're talking about the counties that might see more of these kinds of situations where you have, you know, a large number of ICE holds. Do you not believe that this amendment and taking this amendment would be one that would satisfy and support those agencies along the border even more?
Well, there's no, because of your previous amendment, there would be requirement to publish these agreements. There is no requirement under these MOUs, if they have them in existence, to publish those. I think we need uniformity. I think we need compliance. I think we need a commitment to work with our federal partners, and that needs to be out of each of these counties that operates or oversees the operation of a jail. And I think it's very important that there be that transparency and that we know what they're doing. And I think to the argument, if they're doing it already, then let's sign up to this and let's do what everyone is doing. If they're in fact doing already, it's going to be not only under this program, they should welcome this if that's the case, because number one, for example, if it's El Paso County, they're going to get $20,000 for compliance with this, plus they're subject to their reimbursement costs on any days that they have to keep people in there. So I don't, like I say,
I understand that, but you're not tabling the amendment because you don't believe that these counties are doing their job in checking.
I didn't say that. I didn't say they're not doing their job. I'm sure they're doing a very good job. I just think there needs to be uniformity and compliance with everyone working together, rather than have a patchwork of these people are required to do one thing and these others are required to do something else.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. At this time, I'd move to table.
Mr. Moody to close on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members. And I appreciate Mr. Romero's questions on this. So if these MOUs are in place, right, that's a proactive thing that's happening in our counties now, and those MOUs would be required to be published and be in compliance with the substantive terms of the bill. And so I guess it's two ways of getting to the same result. And the broader point I want to make, because I think and Mr. Spiller was very clear, he knows that there's a lot of collaboration going on already in these jurisdictions. And so part of this conversation is to let you know, for those of us who do live along the border, we have an enormous amount of federal presence, and our local sheriff, at least in El Paso, and I think along the border, is working collaboratively with those entities to get to the same goal that's housed in this bill. And so the amendment is very simple in that if those MOUs are in place, and if they're in compliance with the terms of the bill as it is, then that would satisfy the requirements. And if they ever fall out of compliance or they don't have an MOU, then the bill would necessarily mandate them to then participate in the uniform system that's contained within the bill. So I guess I would say this is two ways to give opportunities to make sure that we're doing the right thing. I know in our community, we take these relationships with the federal government very seriously and collaboratively work with them. And so I would ask you to vote no on the motion to table. Thank you so much.
Okay. There was no. Excuse me. The motion to table was made by Mr. Spiller. The question is on the motion to table. If you're in favor of the motion to table, or if you're in favor of the amendment, vote no on the motion to table. If you're opposed to it, vote yes on the motion to table. It's a record vote. The clerk will ring the bell. Show Mr. King voting aye. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? There being 86 ayes, 49 nays, the motion to table prevails. Mr. Spiller to close on his amendment as amended.
I'd move adoption.
Mr. Speaker,
Mr. Romero, for what purpose?
does the gentleman yield for questions?
Would you yield, Mr. Spiller? He will.
Yes, I will.
Thank you, Mr. Spiller. If you don't mind, I'd like to conclude with some of the questions that I had before, just to create a little bit more clarity about the amendment as amended. So one of the things that's of concern is that in your floor sub, multiple times the word contractors is listed. So you list personnel that could be granted immigration enforcement authority, but in the original version it only included officers and employees of the sheriff's department. So why in the sub did we grant immigration enforcement authority to contractors?
Well, to the extent that we have some jails that are not operated by the people the sheriff's department, they may contract that out, then those people would be authorized to be part of this.
So your understanding is this is not any outside contractor, this is only the contracting of counties with private prisons per se, because they may not have a prison themselves?
I don't know. I think the term is expanded where it's broad enough to cover whoever that might be that would be in a position to serve these warrants, or whether it be warrants of arrest for immigration offenses or warrants of removal. So whichever it may be, I think that term is broad enough to allow that. But again, they're only served in a jail facility under the warrant service model, and so.
So you got to my next question. You don't foresee these contractors acting as immigration agents outside of anywhere other than a jail? Is that correct?
Correct. This bill only requires it. Now, if they choose, you have the part of the bill where if they choose to participate at a more comprehensive level, And that would probably be under the task force model. But to do that, that operates outside the scope of the jail. That's a different thing. But except to that extent, the warrant service model is only in the jail, only executing things on people that are otherwise already in jail on other criminal charges in violation, potentially, or at least allegedly, of the state of Texas.
Okay. Thank you for that. I want to switch gears here a little bit and ask you something. There's many people here that I've spoken with that have called our offices that are probably in the gallery that feel that while some would say that this bill makes communities safer, others will argue that it makes it less safe. And one of the reasons for that is when you begin to divert the attention of sheriff's offices from their, in a lot of cases, they're seen by community as being welcoming, supporting their law enforcement officers. But 287G around the land is known as, oppressive in some sense because of the history of this program. Do you believe in any way that you're creating, and it could be creating, a chilling effect now of communities and embracing their law enforcement or the relationship with the law enforcement and feeling that they maybe would not report crimes now because they know that if somebody, interacts with law enforcement now, they could be sent away?
Well, I don't think so. I don't believe so. If a crime occurs, this is no discouragement to anyone to report a crime. Are you saying because if they think that this person that has committed allegedly a crime also has a removal warrant or a ICE warrant or a detainer against them, because of that they're not going to report the crime? Is that
No,
what you're asking?
I'm telling you, in a community that may have an undocumented community and a crime occurs, now they're less likely to want to interact with police because they don't want to make the call. If something happens within a family, an act of domestic violence, someone doesn't want to make the call. Look,
I'm not saying that couldn't happen if someone had that thought, whether it was a mistaken thought or otherwise. I'm not saying it couldn't happen. I would say, though, that what the focus of this bill is to make our communities safer, because what is more likely under certain counties that aren't following this is that they don't check. They don't know because they don't want to know, and they don't check, and because of that, they're releasing people that have removal warrants and other warrants out on them in the federal ICE system, and they're bonding them out and letting them go back into the street where they recommit crimes. That's what this is trying to address.
Respectfully, is it not a crime today for a sheriff or a jailer to not turn over to ICE someone that has an immigration hold?
Is it a crime for them to not do that?
Yes.
Not that I'm
It
aware
is.
of. Yeah.
It's a Class B misdemeanor.
Okay. Yeah. It may be a misdemeanor offense. Yes.
I think that that's something that we have to move past and not continue to say that people are being let out. The facts are the facts. Today, it's a crime for any sheriff. I'm sure Sheriff Lauterbach would not be letting anybody go because he knows now he has broken a crime, and his jailers.
If he knew. But that's what I'm saying. That's what this bill attempts to address, is a problem that it may be a crime if they intentionally or knowingly do that. But for them to say, we suspect that might happen, but we're not going to even check because we don't want to know. That's what this bill tries to address and tries to fix that problem, because we can't have them just consciously disregarding the data and the information that is readily available. It takes that long to check if they will just do it.
Representative Spiller, I thank you for letting me come out to your committee hearing and ask you about my concerns, specifically when a jail is overcrowded. In my Tarrant County jail, we had to shut down 4 days. And, I can go down Montgomery County, 98% full. Freestone County, 98% full. Bexar County, 96% full. A jail population of 4,922 with a capacity of 5,108. We have an overcrowding problem. And we have a problem with ICE not picking these folks up. Are you not concerned with the conditions and the safety, in this case, even of U.S. citizens that might find themselves incarcerated, and we are going to exacerbate that problem with mandatory compulsory 287G. Was that ever a concern of yours?
Well, we look at all things, and I listened to your very straightforward questions in our committee, and some of those were taken to heart when we redrafted this. And so, I'm not going to say those aren't concerns. Cost and overcrowding of jails in Texas are always a concern, but the purpose here is if you do this, ICE has 48 hours to pick those people up, and if they don't do that, they're subject to being released. This bill does not stack people up in the jail. That's not the purpose of this bill. The purpose of this bill is to alleviate that, and also to find out the people that in our country that don't need to be in our country, and that frankly may be subject to removal under 8 USC 1227. So that's the purpose of this bill.
Yeah, I understand your intent for the purpose of the bill, but my point is that all of us should be concerned with what happens in our county jails. And let's say, for example, because of your bill and us having to hold these folks, maybe we're releasing folks that are local criminal activity, and now we're having to release or dismiss those folks earlier than otherwise. We might actually be releasing people that could be more dangerous to our community.
Well, I don't believe that, but you know, and I also, my understanding is from the communications that I've had and that Representative Louderback has had, I know because we've talked about it, is that ICE is ramping up and attempting to cooperate more with Texas, waiting on this bill to be passed so that we can have better cooperation and more efficient operation of these folks that are detainees that ICE is required to pick up.
Yeah, well, I think that the folks that you talk about that are being released after 48 hours may be some folks that might have some simple misdemeanor offenses and they let them go. But if they're being held on something greater than that and they have an ICE hold, they're not letting them go in 48 hours, Representative Spiller. That's my point to you. And if they're not letting them go in 48 hours, they are taking the position, they're stacking that jail. They're going to stack them even more. They're going to be overfilled, and I think that's a great concern. Should be a concern for all of us. When I was in your committee, I mentioned that in Tarrant County Jail, in 7 years, we've had 65 deaths. Something that we should all be concerned with. And so when we have 65 deaths, that tells me that jail is not being run as safely as possible. And while we have Jail Standards Committee, the Commission on Jail Standards, I would say that the work...
The gentleman's time has expired.
Move adoption.
Members, this is a vote on the amendment. Mr. Moody's, no, excuse me. Okay, this is a vote on Mr. Spiller's amendment as amended. If you're in favor of the amendment, vote aye. If you're opposed, vote no. It's a record vote. The clerk will ring the bell. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? Being 111 ayes, 24 nays, the amendment as amended is adopted. Mr. Schatzline, for what purpose?
Would the sheriff yield for some questions?
There's no one has the floor at this
I'll
time
wait.
to ask a
I'll wait.
question to. Thank you. Does anyone want to speak on, for, or against the bill?